Welcome to the Date Forever podcast. Keep your relationship fueled up with strategies discovered by couples and experts. Because at Fuel Collective, we believe better relationships will equal a better world. You are about to discover specific insights and tools that cost little or nothing to implement to help you date forever. And now, here are your hosts, a couple who always have a half-packed suitcase and a date night in the calendar, Sammy and Nathan Yeager.
Hello. Welcome to the very first Date Forever episode for 2021. Welcome back, Nath.
Welcome back, Sammy.
How has your last week been?
My last week's been amazing. I've really enjoyed our couple of beach dates that we've had in the morning and just being able to get up early and actually go out and do some stuff, around Sydney that we've been meaning to do for so long that we just
Since we lived here.
Yeah, it really has been since we lived here.
Hey, so we have decided that as part of our 2021 kickoff, we're going to introduce a new segment. We're going to call it Fuel Up or the Fueled Up or things we're fueling up. I don't know. We're going to call it something.
Something like that.
But the idea is that we're going to share something from our own life that has helped us fuel up in that past week. So it could be fueling up our relationship with one another, our relationship with ourselves, or just, something that's helped us feel topped up this last week. So Nath, in the last week or so, what has been fueling you up?
So it's probably a bit what I mentioned just before, like about actually getting out in nature and going for some walks, going to the beach, getting some sun, recharging from the sun. And yeah, it's just been really nice to actually get out and about, enjoy our mornings together and have some quality time together. So Sammy, what's been fueling you up this week?
So for me, I think the biggest fuel up was us taking some time to do our annual game plan. So taking a look at the year that was 2020 and set some intentions for 2021 and ask some of those big questions and set some big goals.
Yeah, that's amazing.
What's the goal that you're most excited about for 2021?
So for 2021, I think it's about embracing some more waterfront activities. I feel like that's really been a piece that's missing from us for quite a while. I just really love being near the water and really looking forward to finding an activity or moving somewhere closer to the ocean. So Sammy, what are you most excited about for 2021?
I'm probably most excited about the few things that we've got cooking up in Fuel Collective.
Oh, yeah? Sounds a bit exciting.
Yeah, it is a bit exciting. I'm not quite ready to share with everybody, but we are very close to sharing something pretty exciting.
Yeah, so keep your eyes peeled. In today's episode, we're talking about using writing or journaling as a way to unblock yourself in areas of life where you might be stuck, or to unpick some of the false stories that you've been telling yourself which are holding you back. Now let's get into it.
Welcome to the Date Forever podcast, everyone. Today we've got Amy Kaye joining us. She's been involved professionally in the creative arts since she was a child in theatre, radio and film. She's a published writer and poet. She's the founder of Write On South Africa, which specialises in helping people unblock themselves creatively, get past psychological fears, tell their story and find their voice through writing. Amy believes that writing your story can be used as a therapeutic tool for healing and that everyone has a story to tell. Welcome to the show, Amy.
Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. So can you just tell us, what is narrative therapy?
Okay, so narrative therapy is something that I kind of stumbled upon doing my research when creating Write On. I actually started writing organically before I knew about narrative therapy, and it's using stories from your life as a form of therapy. And I think narrative therapy tends to focus on dialogue, using dialogue in that way, and also writing letters. So that is narrative therapy.
Okay, and how did you get interested in this?
So the reason why I started writing in the first place was I struggled a lot with creative anxiety. I had a lot of things that I wanted to say. I had a lot of things that I wanted to express myself. I was very creative growing up, but I was a secret writer for many years, in that I was writing, but I wasn't showing it to anyone because it was the usual fears of it's not good enough. Nobody's going to care about this. I'm not creative enough. I'm not smart enough, blah, 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 blah. All that usual inner critic, imposter syndrome stuff that I was dealing with. And, having worked in different spheres in the creative arts, I've worked in radio, I've worked in film, I've worked in theatre, I've worked in music. I kind of found that the stuff that I was struggling with was the stuff that all these different kind of creative people were struggling with. It wasn't just writing specifically, it was whatever art form you were going through, which is this whole imposter syndrome, inner critic, I'm not good enough, I want to express myself, but who's going to care about me? And so I would kind of do these, I would look for writing courses because writing was always my go-to thing of therapeutic tool. I always used it naturally as a child. When I was going through quite a lot of stuff, I would journal, and it was a way for me to cathartically release. So I would go to these writing courses, and then it was always kind of the same format. It was always like creative writing. So you do like a fictional story, and then you would get heavily criticized like you would in school. So your writing isn't quite good enough. The paragraphs don't work. And it was all very technical, and there was no encouragement. There was no it felt like there was no safe space for me to tell my story. And because I'd worked in documentary making, I already kind of knew how to get people to tell their story. And I thought, well, how could I take writing and people's stories and put it together and kind of make a safe space for people to express themselves? And again, when I first started, I thought like, I don't know what I'm doing, and is this even a thing? And is writing therapy even a thing? Because I didn't know about narrative therapy at the time. I knew there were different kinds of arts therapies like music and drama and dance and everything under the sun. There was no writing therapy. And I thought, but this is weird. Why? It's the one thing we all get taught, how to write, how to express yourself through writing. So why are we not documenting our lives through this? And a friend of mine at the time, there was a entrepreneurial week in Cape Town called Creative Week Cape Town, where the public was encouraged to basically try things out creatively. And my friend was working at a studio at the time, and she said, why don't you just do a workshop? Just do one workshop, see what happens. I did one workshop, and that went really well. And then people said, can't you do a course? And that went really well. And then it just it's gone from there.
So what are the kind of things that you tend to help your clients with?
I like to start at the beginning stage for people, where people are basically stuck. Like they want to express themselves. And it's quite interesting because it's not necessarily people that want to become writers. I've always said that writing is just the tool that I use. It's the way that I access people and their stories the quickest. So it's people dealing with imposter syndrome. It's people dealing with confidence issues, low self-esteem, people who feel stuck in their lives, people who want to make big changes but have no idea how to, people that are stuck in relationships, family, like anything where you're feeling stuck or you're feeling creatively, you want to do something, but you don't have the confidence or you're too scared. How do I start? I like starting at the beginning. And then I have had now over the years a few one-on-one coaching clients where once they already know how to express themselves through writing, they usually have a particular project in mind. So like I've helped people write film scripts and plays and books and so on and so forth. And that's just one-on-one coaching.
Mm.
So I guess what have you found have been the blockers for people? Like what's actually really stopped them from being able to unleash themselves creatively?
I'd say the number one fear that people have is I'm not good enough. And that comes back to the narrative. That comes back to the story you've been telling yourself, because ultimately we're all our stories and we're all our perceptions of ourselves. If you're thinking to yourself, I'm not good enough, you're never going to have the confidence to start, or you'll start, but you'll never kind of push through. With anything creatively that you want to start, it's always that fear of I'm not good enough, or nobody's going to care, or why would anybody want to listen to me? What is my value? And it's figuring out, where does that I'm not good enough thought process come from? Where did that start? Where did you first pick that up? Who told you that? Because often what happens with our stories is we get stuck in our lives because we're living a story that isn't actually true anymore. So say, for example, maybe you love dancing. When you were a child, as we children, we're naturally very creative, and we dance and we play and we act and we do all kinds of things, and we love it. And then your teachers come along, or older kids come along, or your brother comes along, or somebody comes along and goes, oh, why are you doing that? That's so stupid. Or you get embarrassed, or you get shamed, and then you decide something bad happens, and then you go, oh, well, I can't do that. I'm not good enough. And you kind of put it in a box. And as we get older, there are more and more creative things. We tend to put them in boxes because we get told things like, be realistic, get a real job. Creativity isn't something that you can make money off of, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah.
So we just start putting all these things away, and our confidence gets lower and lower and lower because there are very few spaces in life that are safe where you can creatively express yourself and that you're supported and you're told, just do it without worrying about. The whole thing with me is I've never criticized people's writing. I've never said, oh, well, yours is better than yours. You can't compare people's stories. Stories is truth, and truth shouldn't be judged. And I think with writing your stories, I think around the world, when we were in school, you would be asked to write a creative essay about your life, and then you say this very vulnerable, intimate thing, and then the teacher goes, well, you got a C because actually your sentence structure was bad. And then you go, oh, I'm never doing that again. So these things just keep getting blocked over and over again by the adults that supposedly know better, in a time when we should rather be creatively encouraged and supported and gone, that's great, wonderful story. Focus on this or focus on that, rather than you're bad or that's wrong or you didn't get an A.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you share that, because this morning Nathan and I were down at the beach and there was a whole heap of families with their kids, and we were just watching the way that the kids were interacting and playing with each other and their parents and, you know, their grown-ups. And we were just questioning each other and going, well, when is it that we stop running places? You know, you watch these kids and they're running between their friend and their towel and their sandcastle, and then they're running back and they've got all this energy, and, you know, they're just living without abandonment, really. Like, you know, they're doing cartwheels, they're creating like weird sandcastles. And when is it that we, stop interacting in the world like that? It really was a moment of stopping and pausing and propping.
I think there's a moment of self-awareness that happens. I think you suddenly go, oh, I have a body, or, oh, I'm too fat, I'm too thin, I'm too tall, I'm too short, I'm not cool, I'm not. It's that self-conscious thing, especially as teenagers. Teenagers really struggle with this, that whole, what is my identity, who am I? But yeah, I don't know what age it is, but there is the thing where you're completely self-unaware. So you are free to creatively express yourself and do stupid stuff on the beach, and you're just having fun. But again, you know, depending on the way that you were brought up, if you don't have a family or environment that encourages that self-expression, you will learn to be a very good girl, a very good boy, and be scared of expressing yourself. Because if I express myself, then my mother's going to scream at me, or my father's going to hit me, or whatever it is. They're often these adults in our lives that are determining who we are. And unless you are a particularly confident or just rebellious person, you're going to want to try and impress the adults. So then, again, you make yourself small so that other people don't feel uncomfortable. Because it's a case of, I think, adults that do that with children, that try and make them quiet or make them small, are quite unhappy with themselves, because they're being reminded of all that joy and going, oh, well, I don't have any joy in my life. So it becomes an irritation. I think people that live small lives tend to make everybody else around them small, because they don't have any space in their lives for other people to be big. You can't congratulate someone or be happy for someone for doing well if you're living this small life, because it shows you up and you start going, where's my joy? Or why am I not doing big things? Or why are you so happy? And it's this comparison thing. We like to compare our lives to other people, whether we think other people better than us or worse than us. It's a thing that we struggle with a lot.
Amy, the name of the show is obviously the Date Forever podcast, and it's about dating yourself and also, you know, the person that you've chosen forever. And I'm really curious, you mentioned earlier that, you know, writing was a natural form of expression for you, and it was something that came, you know, you always had an inkling or an urge to do. If someone wanted to use that tool or that process of journaling to get to know themselves better and really date themselves, but have never actually picked up a pen and sort of done that kind of thing before, where can they start?
Okay, so what's important if you want to start any kind of writing practice, you've got to remember that writing is a muscle. I always encourage people to write with pen and paper, because there's a completely different thing that happens when you write by your hand. You have more of a body connection. You slow down and you process things easier. Whereas if you're typing things up on your phone, you can just delete it and you kind of get quite disconnected. And if you're going to be writing by hand, it slows the whole process down. So firstly, write by hand. It is irritating, and because we're not used to it anymore. But what I love about handwriting is also that it shows you what's going on psychologically and emotionally. You'll notice that your handwriting changes. So often your handwriting is showing you something. And I just think in the future, I don't want to live in a world where there's no handwriting. I don't want to live in a world where there are no letters and there's no handwriting, because that's what's going to happen. It's all going to be digital. And I want to know what my grandmother's handwriting looked like, or my mother's handwriting looked like, or whoever's handwriting looked like. I don't want it to be this, oh, remember when we used to use pens?
So step one, notepad and pen.
Notepad and pen, yes. Or find yourself a really nice journal. Often people tend to not want to get a nice journal because they're kind of too precious about it. And, oh, I don't want to use it. And what if I mess it up? You can't mess it up, firstly. You can never mess it up. Every piece that you write, whether it's a journal entry or whether it's an actual piece you're working on, think of everything that you write as a rough draft. you can always edit it later. I think people when they want to write something, they have perfection in mind. I can't write it until I have the whole book plotted out in my mind. It doesn't work that way. You have to actually write it to figure out what you're writing about. So get a book that you don't mind messing up. So get like a very cheap notebook that you don't mind messing up and you can scribble in and scribble stuff out and whatever. Get that right by hand. Then writing is a practice. It's a muscle. So, for example, if you wanted to wake up in the morning, if you woke up in the morning tomorrow morning and you went, I want to run a 5K, but you don't even exercise, that would be pretty intimidating. It's the same thing with writing. You don't wake up in the morning and go, I want to write a New York Times bestseller. You're not going to because it's too intimidating. So you have to start really small. So start a writing practice. Julia Cameron, who wrote The Artist Way, suggests morning pages where you write 3 foolscap pages every morning. But that is very intimidating. And unless you love writing, why would I want to do that? So I don't always encourage that because I just think if you're not a writer or you don't love writing, it feels like a stressful way to start a day. And I don't want people to associate it with writing. But what you can do, and I would actually like you to maybe do it now.
We're prepared. Notebook and pen in hand.
So normally what I would do is you can do this for yourself, but because, you are together, I think it would be nice if you do it as a couple. This can be a journaling practice that you can do every day, and I recommend people do it either at the end of the day before they go to sleep or the next morning where they think about the previous 24 hours. You're going to start a gratitude journal. And the idea is that you write 3 things that you were grateful for in the past 24 hours. But it doesn't have to be big things. It actually but you can concentrate on the smallest of things. So it's like somebody smiled at you, a dog wagged its tail, there was a beautiful sunset. It can be little moments. It doesn't have to be the biggest stuff. Because the whole point of trying to find stuff to be grateful for is, 2020 has been rough. And sometimes the thought of trying to find 3 things to be grateful for is like, you've got to be joking. But if you can find the beauty in, like, it rained, that was amazing, then you start finding more and more things. 3 things minimum, but you can write as many as you actually want to. Some days you'll have 20, some days 3 is going to be like pulling, I don't know what. But what I want you to do is I want you to write 3 things that you're grateful for each other. So think about how you've been with each other, what have you done. It can be little things. You made coffee, you made the bed, 3 things.
So my first 3 from just the last 24 hours, I've got an immense amount of gratitude for the surf lifesavers at the beach, volunteer team, keeping everybody safe. It was pretty windy down at the beach this morning and they had their work cut out for them. Also just incredibly grateful for the opportunity to watch kids play at the beach. And I want that to sound so not creepy, but it was just really lovely to see children playing without abandonment. And then my third one of just the last 24 hours is we went to our local fruit and veg shop today and the produce was just really beautiful and we haven't been for a week or so. So it was just beautiful fresh cherries and fruits and it was lovely.
Awesome.
And for me, I'm really grateful for you, Sammy, for making delicious satay noodles for dinner.
Nice.
And I'm really grateful for our beach date that we had this morning. It was last minute. We had nothing planned and we just got up and were able to get out of the house and just go. And it was really amazing. And I was really grateful for our afternoon nap we had together as well.
Lovely. So you can obviously do this for yourself. You can write your grateful journal every morning or evening. I would recommend doing it at the same time every day. Because if you don't make it a habit, you're not going to do it. So just do either first thing or last thing before you go to bed. You can do it for yourself, like you did with Sammy, or you can do it for each other. You can find to be grateful in your relationship. And what's really nice about this is you'll be surprised by the things you're grateful for. Your partner's going to go, you're grateful for that? Like, did that even make a difference? I didn't know that made a difference to you. And you'll start looking for little things. But a really nice thing to do is if you do this for a year, you can write this in a journal, or you can write them on Post-it notes, put the Post-it notes in a jar, and then on New Year's Eve, start a new tradition of taking all the things out that you were grateful for. Or just when you're having a bad day, you take a Post-it out and you go, oh yeah, that was a good memory. It's just such a great way to remain positive, and it's an easy way to get you into writing daily. And once you start doing the gratitude process, then you can kind of start working your way onto the next level and writing more about your life.
Yeah, I really like this. Nathan and I actually started our gratitude practice couple of years ago now, after I read the book The Happiness Advantage by Shawn Achor, and it was just such an incredible reframe for me. And then I think because we shared the practice, Nath as well, that you get more of what you look for. And if you start looking for things to be grateful for, it all of a sudden is really easy to observe the things that you're grateful for. So thank you for sharing that. I think I totally get behind that practice. I love that. So what are some of the things that you've seen, people unlock or find out about themselves through this practice of writing or journaling?
The thing that I always love is when people have aha moments. It's just people having perspective, people changing the perspective, people being able to see themselves differently. I think there's great power in not only writing, but something magical happens when you read your writing out loud. You can write about the most traumatic things, and when you write things down, you're using your left brain to kind of, okay, so that happened, and that happened, and that happened, and that happened. And you can disconnect from the emotion. But when you read your writing out loud and you have people witness that writing in a safe space where there's no judgment and there's no criticism and you feel heard, it's incredibly powerful, because often people are so scared that they're going to be judged. I get people to write about stuff that is not always the fun times. It can often be, we can go to very dark places, and people are terrified that other people are going to judge them as harshly as they're judging themselves. Most people are wondering when they come to class and they do these courses and workshops, the question that most people are worrying about is, what are other people going to think of me? If I tell them the secret, if I tell them this thing that I've been holding on to for so many years, this shame, what are people going to think of me? And you'll find that every single person in the room is thinking, what are they going to think of me? Nobody's actually thinking about you as much as you're thinking about yourself and what other people are thinking about you. Nobody is as obsessed with you as you are with you. You're thinking, everybody in life is going, oh, what are they going to think of me? They're not thinking about you. So that's the first thing, is nobody really cares. And that can be a good thing or a bad thing. Sometimes people have this kind of thought of like, nobody cares? Like, oh God, now I don't matter. It's not that you don't matter. It's just that the way you're obsessing about your life, nobody else is. So if you can change that energy into a positive thing, you can really start to make things happen. One of the most amazing things I did was I worked with a group of sex workers. I was asked to do a 6-week course with them. And I'll admit I went in there with prejudice, thinking that sex workers, what are they going to want to write about? What are their hopes and dreams? I don't know. I had this, maybe Disney-fied idea of what a sex worker is. And they were so honest and they were so vulnerable. And when you realize the hardships these men and women have had to go through and the realities of what they're living in, and they're going, hey, start a gratitude journal. Find 3 things every day you can be grateful for. And meanwhile, this person is washing themselves out of a bucket and living on a piece of cardboard under a bridge. And you start getting perspective and you start going, am I being facetious right now? But you realize that everybody has, it's going to sound really corny, but everybody has the same hopes and dreams. Everybody just wants to be happy, to find somebody they love, to have a good relationship, to have a home. It's all the same stuff. It's all the same hopes and fears. And having them be so honest. And it's funny enough, throughout the time that we did that course together, I thought that they would write about sex, because obviously as a sex worker, that's all you're dealing with. And they talk about people and the psychology of people and like, how do you do that? How are you a sex worker? How do you put yourself through that? And they never really wrote about sex, which was very interesting. They didn't want to. And secondly, the one time that somebody did mention it, she said, it's a mask. You put the mask on when you work and you take the mask off when you go home. And I think a lot of people live their lives like that. You become a different person when you're working.
It's probably the same if you had a group of accountants. They're probably not writing stories about being an accountant.
Exactly. Because why would anybody care about me being an accountant? For me, it's so boring. A lot of the time we find that our own stories, like if I tell you, write a story about your life, the thought is, but it's so boring. The reason why you find it so boring is because you know the story so well and you've told it a million times. So you're going, yeah, when I was 8, that thing that happened, here we go again. But you've got to remember that the reader or the audience or the person that you're talking to has never heard your story before. So to them, they're going to find the fact that Went to the beach, fascinating. I mean, just a little bit of information that you told me about your day in Australia. I can see the fruit at the market. And I can see the beach. And I'm like, Australia. Like, to me, it's so foreign. And I've never been to Australia. I mean, I know Cape Town and Australia, we've got similar kind of things going on. But just by telling a little bit of your story, I can see it in my mind already. And that's the beauty of telling your story and using words to express yourself in that way. Because to you, you're going, it's just another day. And to me, I'm going, I wonder what that life is like.
I think that's true, isn't it? It's something that Nathan and I have realized in publishing the podcast is that quite often the feedback is that people want to hear more about us and our lives. And we're like, oh, I didn't think we were interesting. We thought our guests were the interesting ones. And it's been a real learning curve to be like, oh, okay, turns out we are way more interesting than what maybe we thought we were. So thank you for sharing that. Hey, so what I would love to know, Amy, is, if couples start taking up, a more in-depth writing practice as individuals and, practicing those kind of gratitude practices and those kinds of things, what are some of the things that you've seen happen for relationships?
Quite mind-blowing stuff. The thing is, if you're going to do this, you have to be honest, firstly. You can't kind of keep the truth when it suits you. You can't, I'm only going to reveal this, I'm not going to reveal that. You've got to be 100% honest. And secondly, you have to be willing to be vulnerable. You have to really go there. Again, don't keep stuff that you think is going to offend the other person. But I think the main thing that when this is a breakthrough process for couples is there has to be trust and there has to be respect. I remember one group of people, it was the couple's actually now married, but at the time they were dating, and it was the father of the girl. So it was the girl, the father, and the boyfriend. They came in doing the writing course not really knowing what it was. They knew it was a non-fiction course, but they didn't know anything else. And when I go there, I really like to go there because I believe in telling the truth, and I believe that it brings people close together. And I think one of the topics that we had was, tell me about your first sexual experience. Now, this is, the father and the daughter, which is just embarrassing as all hell. And then it's the boyfriend, with the father going, there's like a lot of, and I remember thinking, oh God, please let them just go there, because my hope is always like, if you can be honest and you can be brave and you can really go there, it's incredible. And I remember my main thing with everything that we wrote about was just saying, listen, you have to respect each other. I always maintain that whatever is created in the room, it is a safe space, that nothing leaves the room. It is a therapeutic session, so you don't go home and go, oh, this person wrote that about, no, it can't work that way. Because
into the vault.
Yeah, it has to be confidential. So the whole thing was, I said to them, look, you are going to reveal things to each other, but you've got to promise me that you're never going to use it against each other, because if you do, this isn't going to work. There's going to be resentment and there's going to be stuff that's going to come up, and you've got to all go there, but you're never allowed to bring it up and you're never allowed to use it. Okay, sex, that's quite a big topic. Let's go there. And it was incredible. And it was so honest, and there was none of this like, my daughter, or oh, my boyfriend, or it was incredible. And there were just so many moments like that where you could see initially they really didn't want, they first said they didn't write about it, then they definitely didn't want to share about it. But just being heard with no judgment was incredibly powerful and brought them all together. It was amazing. And ever since doing that, I always think about them, and I think I'd love to do kind of more family dynamics like that. Because imagine, you think you know your family members, but how well do you know them? Like those secrets that they're keeping, or things from their childhood, or when they were growing up. There's certain stories that we tell each other over and over and over again, especially in family dynamics. Almost you get together for Christmas or New Year's, and it's the same old, remember when, same jokes, same stories. It's not like you're going to go at Christmas dinner. So tell me about your first sexual experience. That's obviously not going to happen. But it's that idea of, tell me about real loss. Tell me about a time that your heart was broken. Tell me about your best friend growing up and what happened to them. Like, who are you really? What were your hopes and dreams growing up? Who were you when you were 16? Who were you when you were 26? Who are you really? Because I know for myself, my grandparents, they've all passed away, but, they come from a generation where you don't talk about things like this. You didn't talk about anything really other than surface level about your job and stuff. And I just think it's such a missed opportunity to not to get to know your family. And especially with everything that's happened this year with COVID-19. And, if you don't document your story, it dies with you. You might have 5,000 selfies. Great. But that's not who you are. That's a filtered version of you. And who are you really? What do you believe in? What do you love? What do you fear? Who are you? Document your story. You can do that in so many different ways now. You can podcast it. You can blog it. You can Instagram story it. We're living in a time where more than ever people are obsessed with documenting every facet of their lives. But there's so little truth. And it's really sad. I'm overwhelmed by this documentation of nothing. I don't care what you ate. I don't care what you ate and I don't care what you're wearing. But I do care who you are at a deeper level. And there's not enough of that. There's not enough of real truth coming out and people being prepared to be honest. And of course people don't want to be, because you go on the internet and you tell people who you are, and then along come the trolls and people go, why would you say that?
Amy, I really liked what you said somewhere in there was around, who are you really and how well do you know those people that are your family or your friends or your partner or your chosen someone. It's all of those things, but it's also how well do you know yourself? Because even as you were saying, to write about your first sexual experience, I was like, I don't really want to write that down. And not even, I don't want to write that down and share that with anyone, but that makes me feel uncomfortable to write it down, which means it's probably something that I should write down.
Yeah, completely. Because there's shame there for whatever reason. That's how I work with people is, your stories keep you stuck. So there's something there. There's some shame. There's some trauma. We don't know what it is. I'm not going to
pull.
Yeah, I'm not going to propose what that thing is. But you can liberate yourself by writing about it, being completely honest with yourself and going, this happened, that made me sad, that made it, your first sexual experience often determines a lot of your sexual experiences after that. You go, I'm never going to do that again, or that freaked me out, or what a weirdo, or it sets the tone, right? I mean, it could be amazing, it could be terrible. I've had people write about their first sexual experience being rape. I've had that happen a few times. You never think it's going to be that. And then they talk about that and you go, that's the reality. It's not always the Disney moonshine and roses. It's often super awkward, super horrible. Teenager, you're just trying to do it and it's awful. My first sexual experience was, I don't know why I keep talking about sexual experiences. It keeps going, weird, but okay.
You just got a vibe.
There's clearly a theme coming here today. I believe in this kind of stuff. I mean, there's date forever, so sex is important.
Yeah, it is.
But I think it would be amazing if you could write about your first sexual experience, but really go there. What were the feelings? How old? What was going on in your life at the time? Were you doing it to, get rid of your virginity? Were you doing it because you felt like it was your true love? Unpack it, really write about it. And then what you can do is you almost can start having compassion for yourself. Because if you write it down without having judgment, that's the thing, that's where the shame comes in. You write it down and you go, I was such a, whatever, I was such a slut, or I was such a, how disgusting. But if you write that story and you look at it as if somebody who's never heard it before read that story, how would you feel? Would you look at that same story and go, disgusting person? We think these things about ourselves that we would never think of other people. Read it as a third person and go, wow, this person really went through something. I feel some empathy for her, or clearly she was struggling with this and that. That's where the healing comes through. And again, if you then read the story out loud, it can really help you let go of something. And it can help you let go of that shame or that trauma or whatever it was. And that will, I'm almost certain, would make a difference in your sex life now. Because there's a story that you've got about your sexuality based on that experience, where you might be blocking, I would say, levels of intimacy. Like, I can't go there because, that reminds me of that, But if you just go, this is what happened to me, and I'm okay, and I lived through it, and I learned something, and obviously, Nathan, there'll be no shame or judgment, and you just go, okay, I didn't even know that. It'll bring you closer together. I really think so.
To bring it to a wider spectrum, I know there's probably things that I could write about or experiences that I've had across all areas of my life, whether it's, friendships or, workplace experiences or, wider family or any of those kinds of things. You've just made me realize that although sometimes you might feel like you need to talk it out with someone, it's like, well, maybe talking it out is not the thing, but it could be just writing it, just divulging it to yourself, really?
When you talk it out, you tend to over-intellectualize things, I find. You're not slowing it down. You're talking it out and you're talking for the sake of talking, and then you're still talking, and then you're finding you're going down some weird rabbit hole of talking for the sake of it. Writing slows you down. It will help you bring yourself back into your body, and it's more cathartic. It's just a completely different way of processing things. And you'll be surprised what comes up when you start writing versus when you're talking, it's all kind of surface level, what's ever coming, and it's usually the most obvious stuff. Whereas writing, your subconscious starts, why did I go there? And I was running one sentence and then I ended up at that place. And again, no judgment. Just let it come out. Again, rough drafts. Don't worry about making a perfect piece. Just get it out. And you're probably going to hate it. Most people hate their writing. Like, really, like, think this is the worst piece of writing I've ever written. Oh my God, I'm going to burn this afterwards. Don't. Keep it and put it away somewhere. And when you're ready, you read it later and you'll be surprised and go, but I often find I hate my writing, put it away, and then I'll come back to it a few months later and go, oh, that was quite cool. I quite like that sentence. Or, oh, geez, because you're not in the emotion of it anymore. And you're not in, again, that inner critic that comes up that starts going, oh, that's so stupid. And why did you use that word? And all that stuff that comes up.
Yeah. And I guess it's also proximity. You're looking at something you immediately
so close to it,
created or brought into the world versus reflecting on the dinner that you cooked 2 weeks ago where you're like, oh yeah, that was actually really delicious. And you can't remember that one thing that you were like, oh, I'd do that different next time.
Exactly.
Yeah. A bit of space and distance to appreciate your own talent or skill, or in this case, words.
So, Amy, I really like the point that you shared about relating to your creative family and actually finding out some of the stories that other people have to share that aren't the normal things. So we had a really great experience just a couple of months ago when we were back visiting our family, and we were out at dinner with my grandparents. And we were actually asking my grandma and grandpa about when they first got together and what was their first kiss and when they first...
It's very scandalous because she is a lot younger.
12 years or something.
Yeah, 12 years younger. So, and they got together when they were really young. So we were like, when was it? When was it that this first, became romantic? Kind of love. Yeah, but it wasn't the normal dinner time conversation because we had dug a little deeper and it was really beautiful.
Yeah, it was really beautiful to see them both open up and to feel a bit smitten again as well, I think.
Yeah.
So it was really lovely.
That's awesome.
Hey, so Amy, thank you so much for joining us. We've talked a little bit about like loving life and dating your partner and also being the change and taking accountability for your own stories and your own experiences. But we also talk about be the change in the context of being the change that you want to see in the world. So to say thank you for joining us today, we've provided 7 days of training sessions for young parents so that they can impart some knowledge around child nutrition, immunizations, contraception, and just family planning. So this is done via our partnership with Buy One, Give One, and the project is looked after by Academy of Root Development. So thank you so much for making that possible.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful.
So, Amy, if people want to connect with you or want to learn a little bit more about what you do or writing therapy, how should they do that?
Okay, so you can go to my website, tell your story with writeon.wordpress.com. Writeon is spelled W-R-I-T-E, as in write, not as in write.
Correct.
Yeah.
Awesome. We'll pop it in the show notes.
Or you can connect with me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Write On South Africa, or on Instagram, Write On ZA. There is a course that is coming up, brand new course called Writing to Reset, which is going to be launching next month. And I would like to offer anybody that is listening to this, if you want a book and you use the word reset, you will get 10% off the course. And this can obviously be done online if you're not living in Cape Town.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's really generous. And hey, if anyone's thought maybe they have an inkling to start journaling or writing or unpacking some things from their brain, this might be a great way to start.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been amazing talking to you.
Thanks, Amy.
Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.